am Jack Berry, and I'm here in Bloomfield Hills at the office of Paul Nine, who is the big man in our story today about Grand Traverse Resort. And we have a couple of other characters who happen to be up there and were very important in the Michigan section of the PGA and having the Michigan Open there. We had Ken Devine was up there and Jim Dewling, Ken was the executive director of the PGA Michigan section, and Jim, I think he just kind of runs it. He's been a past president a couple of times and still in the golf business. So I thought we'll start with Paul. And Paul is the magic man for all of Grand Traverse Resort, and tell us how that beautiful resort with that great big, the tallest tower in northern Michigan, how it all happened.
Well, the resort itself was the usual problem. I had a banker with a bad loan. The banker said, I'll finance you, no personal liability, and that started it. And we had a Hilton franchise originally, built the original 250-room hotel, and then we needed something. It would have started in late 78, and we opened in 80.
Well, that was when golf was starting to climb a lot up north.
Yeah, golf was what we believed would be the major draw for the resort. But we felt that we needed somebody with a real name that would do it, and our studies all showed us that. Even though we had a great course that Bill Newcomb did for us.
Well, tell us about that one first, the Spruce Run course.
Well, I was fortunate in getting Bill that he was willing to work with a guy without much money, so it was a long process. We basically brought in the contractors as partners in the resort to afford the money to build the course. Took a couple years. We didn't have as much land either at that time, so the fairways are tight on the Spruce, but that also keeps it tough.
And probably the second resort I did was the Spruce Run golf course at Grand Traverse. And Paul Nine, who was also a Michigan person, and we'd actually crossed paths on campus, had become a resort developer, and he wanted to be part of that. He could see that in the future of the summers. Golf was going to be an important part of that.
Right. So how did Spruce Run? How did it come about?
Well,
that landing you had.
They had already received the permits, and actually kind of a modified 9-hole course was there. Now, it was totally modified and changed eventually by us, and then even later by others. But our effort actually hosted the state open there, I think, at least once, if not twice.
Oh, Fred Muller won there, I know that.
Yep. And so every time a golf architect gets a job and he gets that kind of exposure, that's going to open up more doors for you. And it did.
Well, you started out, it was, I think the first one was a little bit rainy, and Fred Muller, who is the golf professional over at Crystal Downs, had a very good tournament and won in all the slop and rain, and it was a tough golf course.
Almost all the time, Fred was in the running and was one of those great guys that helped with publicity, very amenable individual. Well, we needed something to get publicity. We needed to get to people like you on the papers, and without that type of activity, nobody could afford the advertising costs that it would take. And the PGA was a organization that had that reach, and so we contacted them, and took a long time to negotiate it because we didn't have much money for prizes either.
Well, the PGA knew that golf was good up here because of the Belvedere, and the Golf Association of Michigan had Michigan Amateur up here for years up here. And
right, and those were big successes over the years, and so our lenders and everybody else felt it was the thing to do. And of course, we were fortunate to get a couple major corporations to help us with the funding of the prize money.
This was that first
I
year?
think it was $20,000, but I would not swear to that.
Well, that was still big money back then.
It was big money to us, I assure you.
Still is.
And it took us a year or so to get the money, but we got it, and after that, it carried itself.
Jim, what was your point in, or your part in the Open going up north to Grand Traverse?
Well, I was the president of the section from 79 to 81, which kind of parallels the opening of the resort. And we were hosting the Michigan Open at the University of Michigan. And bless Don Canham and so on, they were giving us $5,000 a year as far as the sponsorship after we'd been at Bedford Valley for a run, and then the University of Michigan, through the efforts of Jim Applegate, who was next door at the Washtenaw Country Club, and Tom Simon, who was a non-PGA member, brought us together with the University of Michigan, and Randy Erskine, of course, having been a player there, brought Canham to the table, and I think we had a 3-year contract at the University of Michigan for $5,000. So when Grand Traverse came along and Mr. Nine came along, my recollection is that we signed a 3-year contract with the resort contributing $12,000 the first year, $13,500 the second year, $15,000 the third year. Yeah, but it was huge money to the section, if you can relate that. As far as fundraising, the $5,000 was cool at the University of Michigan, but when Grand Traverse comes along with 12, 13, 5, 15, and then I think along the way he introduced Simmons Airlines, and it became a pretty prestigious deal for the section to be involved with a first-class resort and Simmons Airlines. And I can remember the committee flying up on a Simmons airplane, and it was a big deal to be a part of it. And then it blossomed from there, from the time the contract was signed. The contract, I believe, was signed right here on Telegraph Road. Does that sound right?
No, it wasn't Telegraph Road. It was Long Lake Road, but it was east of Long Lake Road. It was a different office. You're correct.
East. It was a different office, I remember. But I remember passing Macus Red Fox on the way to the meeting, and of course the event had happened in 1977. So I said,
Jim, how did it go with the PGA at the beginning when there wasn't a great big golf course up here up at Grand Traverse when you started?
Well, the first visit of the committee, and I can recall, we had a van, and there were about 6 of us in the van, and we were going to play in a charity event or a pro-am at Sugarloaf. Sugarloaf was on the map, so it was convenient to stop in the parking lot, and Doug Grove greeted us at I think the original building or the original clubhouse, and showed us what the plans were. And it was pretty basic at the beginning, but again, the changes were made under the direction of Bill Newcomb, and the golf course turned out to be a really nice test of golf. And as we were discussing, Fred Muller won it the first year, and then there was a series of great winners. But the key situation with the involvement with Mr. Nine and Paul and the Grand Traverse Resort was it gave us credibility as far as raising funds for other events. I mean, we leveraged it along the way that, hey, we're getting 15 grand at Grand Traverse, the PGA Championship should be worthy of that also. So it was a significant period in the history of the Michigan PGA as far as purses and...
Well, everybody loved going up to Grand Traverse and sitting there at the sand trap there. The last 3 holes, you could see 16, 17, and 18. I think it was water on 18. 17 was the creek was running along the way, and and you got some pretty nice crowds there. Everybody gathering around. Now, Paul, during the building of the course, you didn't have any mucklucks or knee-high boots or anything like that, did you?
Well, I was still practicing law. I earned no money at the resort. And so I came up typically Friday afternoon. We'd get there just as it was still light. And Bill was out in the field one time with the dozers and mud and boots. And I learned when I pulled in that we had a huge environmental problem because Acme Creek, which was a major trout stream, flows through the property. And we'd had a big rain. And so I saw the DNR guy out there. And so I said, I better get out there. And so in my suit and wingtips, I went out to join him, and I think sometimes being down to earth really helps you, because ultimately we were able to work it out and we didn't pollute the creek.
It really sunk in. Is that it? Like your feet?
Yeah. Well, I didn't wear those shoes again. I'll tell you that.